Bueno, ¿que se sientan? Bien, bien.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to our 11th Spanish Researchers in Australia Pacific Research Forum. Before going forward, let me provide the word to our member, Ivan. Doesn't want to go. To provide an acknowledgement of the country. This is not working.
Thank you, Angel. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan Martinez Botella. I was born in Alicante, Spain, and now I have the privilege to live, work, and play in the lands of the Banarong country of the Kulin Nation in Victoria. In the slide, you can see artwork by my very talented colleague, Maddie Fulton. Maddie is a Banarong and Jajagurong woman, and the artwork depicts the 7 seasons of the Kulin Nation. So whenever you visit the Kulin Nation this time, expect to experience not just 4 seasons in a day, but up to 7 seasons in a day. As the SRAP Victorian representative, it is my absolute pleasure to acknowledge the Gadigal people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting upon today, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. In this special occasion, I thought that it would be appropriate to also acknowledge the traditional custodians in our mother tongue, in Spanish. So, SRAP reconoce a los pueblos aborígenes de Gadigal como los propietarios tradicionales de esta tierra donde el museo se encuentra. Y reconocemos también su conexión duradera y continua con la tierra, el océano, el cielo y la comunidad. Thank you very much for your attention and enjoy the forum.
Thank you very much. Now, for opening our forum, I would like to invite the Spanish ambassador in Australia, Ms. Esther Monterrubio Villard, please, to say some words for opening our research forum. Thank you.
So, perhaps, okay. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Angel, for inviting me as Ambassador of Spain to Australia to address one more year Disrupt Research Forum. For us in the Embassy, it is a privilege to support the organization of this annual event that has become a traditional space for reflection and networking. And I'm very glad, very glad to see that the Spanish researchers in Australian Pacific are a very active and dynamic community whose contributions to research and innovation in this country are very well known and appreciated. So this year's topic of the forum is particularly relevant. In the rapid digital revolution we are in, artificial intelligence is without any doubt a powerful technology that will have resounding consequences in our markets and our societies. Its multidimensional nature and its ability to address the most complex challenges of the contemporary world make artificial intelligence a powerful tool for generating profound economic and social transformations. In opening this forum, I want to highlight what the public sector can bring to the table and how the Spanish government is doing it. I think for governments, it is very difficult to legislate and pave the way for such radical, profound, and above all, rapid technological change. And I also think that the title itself of this forum contains perfectly the dilemma that we are all facing. Artificial intelligence, threat or foe. That is the dilemma. And I think on one hand, we all know that artificial intelligence, that it is a technology, that it is not a future technology. It is a technology that it is here right now, and that we all have experience about how it works, is directly linked to competitiveness and economic growth. So it is key that our countries do not miss the boat of these technologies if they want to boost the prosperity of their societies and their citizens. But on the other hand, and it has always happened in times of all great transformations, we find ourselves in a time of opportunity, but also of risk and uncertainty. And in the process of absorbing the potential of new technology, the economy and the society are going to be shaken and transformed, with significant changes in the job market and in the distribution of wealth. But also there are some ethical elements related to how to protect human rights that are there also in the debate. So governments are an essential actor for a successful technological revolution that makes both, on one side, promote innovation and promote the establishment and the benefits of international and of artificial intelligence, and at the same time is able to deal with some of the risks that these technologies poses. And I want to share with you briefly how the Spanish government is doing this both in the international arena and also at home. Spain believes that the government has an important role to play, both international and national, in the uses of artificial intelligence and technology, in the words of the president of the government, a technology that it is unstoppable but cannot be ungovernable. So, as you all know, in the European Union, we already have the first worldwide legislation on artificial intelligence that aims to regulate the uses of some of these technologies. But also in the United Nations, I wanted to highlight that Spain and Costa Rica were the co-facilitators of the first international consensus resolution on the global governance of the artificial intelligence. In this resolution, the international community recognized the potential of AI to bring new opportunities to socioeconomic development, but also the need for it to be safe, secure, and trustworthy. The Spanish government made a voluntary contribution of 3 million euros to turn proposals of this resolution into action. Also, I must highlight the designation of the Spanish city of Valencia. You know that we have a communication United Nations base in Valencia. So, in Valencia, this base was designated the headquarters of the AI for Humanity Lab of the United Nations, which will function as a center for innovation and multilateral cooperation. Last month in New York, the president of the government of Spain offered Spain as a host for the first meeting of the UN Scientific Panel for Governance of Artificial Intelligence, so reinforcing our social commitment to make sure that this technology is an engine for human development and not a factor for inequality and risk. At the national level, Spain has also taken decisive action. Let me share with you only 3 examples. In 2024, the Spanish government adopted an artificial intelligence strategy, seeking to promote AI as a driver of economical and social transformation with an ethical, human-centric and transparent approach. Second, and also in 2024, the Spanish Supervisory Agency for Artificial Agency started operation, becoming the first agency of its kind in the world. Its fundamental goal is to ensure that artificial intelligence plays an ethical and safe role in the Spanish society and economy. And finally, in 2025, the Spanish government launched ALIA. ALIA is a pioneer initiative in the European Union that seeks to provide a public infrastructure for AI resources, such as open and transparent language models to foster the use of the Spanish in the development and deployment of AI worldwide. So, and I'm going to speak Spanish right now. Así que pienso que este debate es muy oportuno, se encuadra muy bien dentro de las preocupaciones que yo creo y del debate que está en estos momentos teniendo lugar a nivel mundial, en nuestras propias sociedades, pero también en las instituciones internacionales, y creo que es una empresa que nos corresponde a todos, es decir, no es una cuestión solamente de los gobiernos. Aquí cada uno tiene un papel que desempeñar y es un papel muy importante. Es como se dice en inglés, a work of progress. Todo el mundo tiene su papel. Desde luego las asociaciones científicas como la SRAF tienen uno muy importante de iluminarnos el camino, de señalarnos por dónde van las nuevas tecnologías. Pero también lo tiene la academia, lo tiene la sociedad civil y lo tiene también el sector privado, las empresas, que juegan un papel fundamental en la innovación, si queremos estar ahí presentes y convertirnos en un líder en estas tecnologías que indudablemente, a pesar de los riesgos que los tienen, también traerán innumerables beneficios para todos. Entonces creo que el debate es muy oportuno y os felicito por haberlo elegido y también os deseo el mayor de los éxitos. So once again, thank you, SRAC, for the opportunity to open this forum, and I'm looking forward to listening to the different speakers today. And I'm sure that this will make an enriching contribution to the current debate around artificial intelligence. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for this fantastic speech and putting into perspective all the things that the Spanish government is doing related to AI and the importance of all of that in everything, basically, at the moment. That is why we consider that it has been very convenient to try to talk a little bit about this. Continuing the opening, I hope that my remote controller is working. And it doesn't want to work today, so that is why I'm a bit nervous there. We have a couple of videos recordings. The first one by Mr. Luis Sanchez Bellisco, who is currently the new ambassador of Spain in New Zealand. Let me try if it works. If it's not, then you do it.
Buenos días, good morning. Kia ora from Wellington, New Zealand. I am Luis Sanchez Bellisco, I am the Ambassador of Spain to New Zealand, and thank you very much for inviting me to inaugurate this 11th SWAP Forum. I had the chance to be posted previously in Australia, so I am very familiar with the SWAP and the magnificent work you do. Congratulations on organizing this new forum. As I have observed since my arrival in New Zealand almost 2 months ago, science plays a key role in our European and bilateral relations with New Zealand. On 9 July 2023, New Zealand became associated to the Pillars 2 of Horizon Europe. This means that New Zealand pays into the Horizon Europe budget, and New Zealand researchers can participate in project consortia under similar conditions as EU member states. The EU is the most significant regional science and innovation partner of New Zealand. More than half of New Zealand researchers have an active collaboration with a European partner. Horizon Europe has currently 19 projects in New Zealand, 11 of which involve Spanish institutions. My intention is to work towards further increasing this participation and, above all, to promote direct contacts between institutions and researchers of both countries. From the Spanish Embassy in Wellington, we would also like to express our full support of the SRAP in order to collaborate in the organization of events in New Zealand. I, myself, and the entire team at the Embassy in Wellington are at your disposal to support you in your work in New Zealand. We wish you every success in the celebration of this 11th Forum, whose theme of artificial intelligence could have been more interesting, and we hope to learn soon about the conclusions reached. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
We thanks again the Ambassador of Spanish in New Zealand, and indeed remember that SRAP is not only Australia, it is also New Zealand and some island in the South Pacific, and we are collaborating also with them in order to organizing new events and some few more activities that I will mention a bit later. So next we have another little recording from our very good friend Inmaculada Riera, who is the General Director of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Dear friends of Spanish researchers in Australia Pacific, dear Ambassador of Spain in Australia, thank you for your strong support of the association, and I would also like to extend my greetings to the new Ambassador of Spain in New Zealand. And dear Angel, I would like to thank you once again for your initiative in organizing this forum, which brings together researchers, companies, and institutions in an exercise of public-private collaboration aimed at promoting research and the transfer of knowledge within the framework of our bilateral relations. Australia is an important country for us, and we celebrate initiatives like this to contribute to be closer. At the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, we are firmly convinced of the value of knowledge, research, and innovation for our growth and competitiveness. We are strong advocates of this model of public-private partnership, which allows us not only to strengthen the relationship between universities, research centers, and the business sector, but also to contribute to reinforcing our bilateral relations in both the economic and social areas. Through these years, SRAP has promoted solid collaboration in the field of research and innovation between Australian institutions and Spanish companies, with examples of joint projects that have generated tangible impact and clear added value, some of which are represented here today. At the same time, SRAP fosters debate and the generation of knowledge on topics of great relevance, such as artificial intelligence, an area of cooperation between our companies and institutions that not only enhance competitiveness but also ensures its ethical use. Dear friends, lastly, as the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, I cannot fail to highlight the angular support provided by the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in Australia. To the President and all the team, we wish to express our sincere gratitude for their excellent work and their firm commitment to Spanish enterprises and their ongoing contribution to strengthening our bilateral relations. The announcement of the new alliance between SRAP and the Chamber of Commerce will further consolidate these ties. Thanks again, dear Angel, for your commitment to strengthening our bilateral relations through knowledge, research, and innovation. And thanks again for giving us the opportunity to share this goal between the private and public sector. For the Chamber of Commerce of Spain, we will wish you great success in this forum and hope to meet you soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully this will work. If not, it's going to be a bit tricky for me because I always like to be moving things when I'm talking. But anyway, let's go to that. As I was a bit nervous at the beginning because this was not working, even though everything was working perfectly well when we were testing half an hour ago. I'm Associate Professor Angel Lopez Sanchez. I'm the current president of Spanish Research in Australia Pacific and an humble astronomer at Macquarie University. Today I'm going to introduce you a little bit about the role of the Spanish researchers in the Australian Pacific community, which in some way is the state of the art of how we are at SRAP at the moment. And of course, not going. So anyway, just for putting in perspective, SRAP is an independent and not-for-profit organization that have been created for researchers, in scientists, in volunteers, in all the areas. in Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific. We are not only scientists per se, but also researchers, because we are also including researchers in other branches of not only science, as I said, but cultures and art. We are currently more than 300 researchers in our association, and includes many disciplines from physics, astronomy, chemistry, history, computing, but also social sciences, medicine, anthropology, and so on. We actually are very proud of have a very good gender balance. Typically, we have 50-50%. And we have 8 delegations in different states or countries, depending how you talk about. I mentioned before the delegation in New Zealand. We also have in the South Pacific Islands and in the rest of the states or territories in Australia. And we are a founder member of RAISEX. Our mission, it is actually fostering collaboration and culture through research and development. And we have 4 pillars to get that. Promoting and mentoring our members, scientific and cultural dissemination, connecting academy with industry and society, and promoting international relationships and science diplomacy. Actually, all of these we are doing them today. That is part of the forum. And many of these have been the way that we are coordinating and managing these pillars and objectives. We do that in a very active way. It is definitely not only me. We are a very dynamic bunch of people doing plenty of things in different places. But I would like to stress at the very beginning the very successful retreat that we have had this year, where we have been reflecting about what SRAP is, what we should achieve, try to achieve, what ways of connecting better with members, with the stakeholders, with the public, setting up priorities, strategies, and also doing a lot of networking, bounding, as you can see in some of these fantastic photos, because we had a great weekend, including excellent food, thanks to Mariano, our fantastic cook this week, and even we did a little bit of astrophotography, so everything in there, and excursions. Anyway, so what are the scientific and cultural dissemination? What are the kind of activities that we do? Many, as it's actually very difficult to summarize them shortly. We do, for example, the research rides, which are one of our main particularly events that we try to coordinate among us, just many times even they are in Spanish, because it is to know each other, so it's very good. That is one that precisely event led last year. We have also online seminars and many other kind of activities that we put together. For example, we have scientific walks, bushwalking, of the mathematical walk that we have some few years ago here in Sydney, and scientific discussions. We also organize visits to research facilities, for example, to the observatories in Silent Spring or to the NASA Deep Space Station. We have also visited the synchrotron in Melbourne and some few others. Particularly, we have many activities during National Science Week that sometimes we organize. This stargazing event that we are showing live the sky, and we connect with the students in Spain that are during the day there, so it's actually a lot of fun. And particularly last year, we have the Science at the Heart in Davos that was very successful, that was organized by our vice-president, Marian. And this year, it was precisely Ivan who organized one of the main event that we did, again in collaboration with the Instituto Cervantes. Typically, the events that we organize for National Science Week is in collaboration with Instituto Cervantes at the Hogar Español, with many different talks and even a bit of flamenco that you have there. So that was fantastic. Thank you very much. And on top of that, we also do plenty of radio interviews, and that is only just a bit of a some few of them, and many of the many different members that collaborate, particularly with SBS in Espanol, SBS in Spanish. I really want to recommend all the podcasts that Claudio Vasquez, who is in the audience, I will participate in the panel discussion later, have been preparing about artificial future, with many interviews to many of us. Well, if you want to know about astronomy and to be sure that you know about the latest news, just go and follow my Astronomía para Principiantes with Carmenza Jiménez in SBS Spanish. That is also part of what we do regarding promoting our mentoring our researchers. It's very much connected to the first part I was mentioning, and we collect all of those successes, news that the members are getting and trying to disseminate all of those in our blog. And one of the other thing that we do, and we have started recently in 2022, it is the SRAP, Fundación Ramón Araeces Early Career Researchers Award, that we have already have 3 different competitions on different years, and we are doing that today. Also, we have the last, the most recent one, so do not miss the talks by the 3 top finalists at 2:25 p.m. And we, considering also the presentation, the winner, we will discuss and we will announce after the panel discussion, so we are very excited about all of that. Continuing with the ways of the activities that the SRAT have been doing, and that again have been very, very strong collaboration with Instituto Cervantes, have been strengthening the relationship between universities here in Australia and universities there in Spain, particularly with this series of conferences about building bridges between the two of them that have been extremely successful with many different universities, all the main universities in Australia, I would say, many participating in that, but also the CRUE, the Conference of Rectores, Conferencia de Rectores de Universidades Españolas, and so on, and they have been really, really, really good. And this year, that is also connecting with a part of the science diplomacy. Something that we have been doing very actively is promoting the Australia joining Horizon Europe, and for this I really want to stress this, to remark the meeting that a delegation from a SRAP member, including our honorary presidents Professor Luis Salvador Carulla and Professor Sergio León Zabal, and also Sofia Samper-Ferro, lecturer in the University of Uranium, Australian National University, with Ms. Signe Razzo, which is the Deputy Director General, DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission, to talk about precisely why it is important for Australia to join Horizon Europe. We're presenting some few ideas for development and innovation. And on top of that, we have been following that because just yesterday we submitted and sent a letter to the Department of Industry, Science and Resources answering the consultation about that the Australian government has right now regarding why it is important for Australian researchers to join to the Horizon Europe, at least pilot 2. That is, as I said, part of the many things that we are doing in the field of science diplomacy. Our main activity in this regard have always been the Malaspina Awards, which is an honor bestowed by the Spanish Embassy in Australia and SPRAP. And right now it is awarded to individuals or institutions who have made an important contribution to the advancement of the scientific and cultural relationship between Australia and Spain. You see here some few of the 4 winners, and in the next slide we will see the last 3 winners, because in the last 3 editions we have already started to collaborate also with the Australian Academy of Science. We are hosting the events there, and since 2023 we are providing 2 awards, one for institutions, another for researchers, for individuals, and it has been very, very successful. This year, just in case you don't know, I'm very proud because the 2 winners for this 8th Malaspina Award edition have been Mr. Bill Bennett and Macquarie University, who have also nominated itself for the nominations. And the award ceremony will be exactly in a week, on the Friday, the 31st of October, 2025, at the Australian Academy of Science, Canberra. And I want also to emphasize the importance that Navanti Australia is sponsoring our Malespina Awards, as well as Oscar de Burgos, who is the sculptor who creates the heart statuette, which is fantastic. So if you want to come, just let us know. Finally, the other important thing that we have to consider about SRAP, it is not only us in Australia Pacific, it is also, we are part of this global engagement, of the global network of associations, 22 associations similar to SRAP, but in other parts of the world, representing more than 5,000 members and affiliates worldwide. You can read there the different associations from Africa South. It is not only South Africa, it is also some few other countries. It's like a SRAP, different countries at the south of Africa. Japan, Brazil, Sweden, Switzerland, Estonia, Finland, United Arab Emirates, Chile, Italy, Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, United Kingdom, United States, Norway, Mexico, China, Ireland, and France. And it has been very successful, this kind of relationship. We are growing and creating many more connections. We have always been, particularly in the meetings that Raíces has typically just before Christmas in Madrid, in this Reunión de Diplomacia Scientific Diplomacy Meeting and Technology Meeting and Innovation. But typically we have ministers from the Spanish government and secretaries of state and so on coming to talk to us and to try to move forward the many things that we are trying to do in order to help the researchers, Spanish researchers in Australia, in Spain, but worldwide also to grow and to create a bit more interest in science and research. So finally, let me add that we are also, one of the many things that we are doing is connecting academic and industry with SRAP, and we have fantastic links with many different companies. Some of them are already here: Navanti Australia, Indra, DIPSA, Ferrovial, Consistect, and so on. So it's fantastic. Some few examples here and there participating in the events. And now we are going to be able a bit closer than that, and that is something that we are going to say in a joint announcement very shortly after I'm done. Because basically, okay. Oh yeah. So, thank you. Okay, but anyway, I'm almost finishing. And because as you can see, there is a very wide connection between what SRAP represents, not only the academic part of many different universities and research centers in Australia and New Zealand and Pacific, but also connecting with the international research, with Raíces, Euraccess, with the culture and education. I mentioned Instituto Cervantes. I have not mentioned, although we do a lot of things also with ALCE, which is the aggregation of language and culture in Spanish. That's classes for Spanish kids here in Australia. In Spanish, we have all this connection with the Spanish diplomatic missions and the Australia Pacific Research, and of course, a non-for-profit organization, including Fundación Ramón Areces and the Spain-Australia Cousin Foundation, which are two of our main sponsors, and industries with many different partners in there. And precisely, as I said, all of this, the best event that we have for connecting all of that together, it is what we are having today, the Research Forum. I really cannot believe that we are already in the 11th, that we have already have 10, a very successful event, and I hope that today's Research Forum is also good, and we are getting plenty of things from all the different conversations about artificial intelligence, all the different networking that we are going to be doing, and all the different ideas that can be arising. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask Rod Noel, General Manager of the Spanish-Australia Chamber of Commerce, to please come here with me because we have a public announcement to make. And that is, I'm going to leave you talking.
That's okay. Don't really do much of these speeches, but first I would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners of the land where we're standing today, the Gadigal people. So I'm Rod Noel. I'm the General Manager of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. Some of you might know me, some of you, it might be the first time you see me. What we do is we are a association, we're an association of around 35 corporate members of Spanish and Australian companies working together here in Australia, bilateral agreements, and around 28 business members of the Spanish companies here in Australia too, and around 50 individual memberships here also. So it takes around 120, 130 members in total. The Spanish Chamber of Commerce has been official in Australia for around 15 years, and officially in the new title of officiality. We'll be celebrating it in March 2026, our 15th anniversary. And to celebrate this, what better to know that the SRAP is joining us as part of La Cámara for next year. This is a discussion that we've been having for a couple of years since I joined the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, and it's a really interesting new approach that La Cámara would take by joining the academia with the with government and business related companies. So finally we're here, and we're quite excited to start bringing this new chapter into the chamber. So thanks so much, Angel, for having me here today. And we're very excited to start seeing these. We do events like forums, we do networking events, boardroom lunches, and understanding and having now SRAP would add that significant area where we were, it's not lacking specifically, but we can broaden up a little bit more our horizons, because having government involved in our discussions, having the businesses involved in our discussion, there was, that line in the middle that was missing still in some of our forums, especially that unbiased opinion coming from research, universities, academic directors, which, now we're going to be able to facilitate and bring in for our community. So thanks so much, Angel, and for facilitating all of this, and can be more excited to see you guys joining us.
As Rod said, we are really excited about this opportunity. I really want to thank you again for all your support and your, let's go to do this together. It has been a long way to get there, in the sense that we have been connected with the different companies and so on. And I also want to thank all the different companies, particularly the ones that we are closest to, Indra, Ferrovia, Tipsa, Consistec, Navantia, because they have been always supporting us, and they have been also saying perhaps it should be, as well as all the diplomacy that the Spanish ambassador, the Spanish embassy, the Chamber of Commerce in Spain, they have been providing us and the support for trying to do one of the things that, as I said, I think it is critical right now, which is connecting closer the academic world, the industry or the private sector, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, sharing people, sharing different things, because that is the way we are going to be building, and we are going to be making the world a better place at the end, which is at least naively what a researcher like me would like. But anyway, and also strengthening the bilateral relationships between Australia and Spain through all these chambers. So I hope you find fantastic news, really. Thank you. Okay, even though remote controller is still doing its things, but I would really like to invite my friend Coral Martinez, director of the Instituto Cervantes Sydney. She's going to be providing an overview about the the relationship that we have had between SRAP and us and the Instituto Cervantes during the last few years, because that is going to be her very last forum. She is leaving to Greece very soon, at the beginning of the next year. So it will be the last opportunity for her to be talking to us in this forum. That's why we wanted you to be here. Thank you.
So
Thank you for making the effort. I know that it has been a bit tricky. So all for you.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning. I would like to make sure that my presentation is short and sweet. But to be honest, it is an honor to be here one more year. And it is an honor to be part of this forum and as a closure for my personal work. But nonetheless, I must say, ¿cómo puedo mover esto? Genial. Thank you so much. Well, Instituto Cervantes, for those who don't know it, as Ángel mentioned, my name is Coral Martinez Giscar, and I'm the director of Instituto Cervantes in Sydney. We are responsible for the whole of Australia and also New Zealand. But there are actually more than 100 Instituto Cervantes around the world, and we are present in the 5 continents. We're actually expanding. We're part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we've all just recently opened offices in Los Angeles, in Dakar, and in Korea. Our mission, our goal is to promote Spanish language and to promote culture. This is a clear visual map of where we are and what we do. As you can imagine, Spanish is growing very steadily, constantly. There's actually going to be more Spanish speakers in the world. For instance, in the United States in 2050, there will be more Spanish native speakers than English. Next one, please. Thank you so much. So here, let's make it about Australia and our current relationship with SRAP. Instituto Cervantes has also achieved a wonderful milestone. We have our headquarters here in Sydney, quite near from here, but we have also recently, almost 3 years ago, opened premises in Melbourne. Instituto Cervantes has been in Australia for 16 years, so it's not one of the oldest ones. Instituto Cervantes is actually 34 years old. We have very few people managing all this work because it's not only about our premises, but about our work. We've doubled our students in 3.5 years, which is a lot of work, but I'm very proud of it. And of course, I truly thank Instituto Cervantes team for their huge effort. And thanks to that, we are currently going to expand our personnel, and we're going to have 2 more people adding up to our team. Great, thanks. No, not the progress. So I would like to talk swiftly about, this, I've mentioned this more or less, what we do. And some people those that do not know Instituto Cervantes, not only do we promote Spanish language, not only from Spain, but from all the Latin American countries that speak Spanish as their mother tongue. We are the official promoters of the DEL exam, the Diploma of Spanish as a Foreign Language. We have one of the biggest libraries in Spanish here in Australia, and of course, and that's why I'm here today, we promote culture in Spanish. So why are we here today, and which is our promotion, right, of culture? Instituto Cervantes is, as I mentioned before, part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His general director, Luis García Montero, signed an agreement with the former Minister of Science, Pedro Duque, our former Minister of Science, in order to ensure that we promoted Spanish in science. And I must say, and this is a personal statement, it is very easy to do my work here in Australia thanks to SRAP. Not all of my colleagues have the fortune, are as fortunate as myself, as being able to promote Spanish language and science and the work of Spanish researchers as I am, and I'm truly thankful and grateful for that. Thank you. This is just an overview of what we've done, but as Ángel has also mentioned in his presentation, I wouldn't want to take up too much time about this. We have done especially 3 big areas during the 5 years I've been here, and of course during the previous years. And to that, I must say that I truly appreciate the work of my predecessors, especially Victor, and of course the predecessors of Angel, with whom we have always worked with very well hand in hand. So the 3 main areas are promotion of the Science Week on Australia during those years, this wonderful thing that came, a project that came after a couple of coffees with Angel. We said, look, we have to do something about this. In my previous post, I had a lot of connection with universities. We thought it was a win-win situation, and we not physically built bridges, but metaphorically built bridges with Spanish and Australian universities. And I think very, very nice talks and promotion activities came through with that in our home, in Instituto Cervantes. And we were fortunate to have La Universidad de Loyola, La Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona, La Universidad de Valencia with her rector, vice-rector. And what we tried to do is to enhance the alliance, the much needed alliance with Spanish universities, Australian universities, and wonderful Spanish companies, also represented by La Cámara, who, by the way, we are also part of La Cámara. So I thought it was a win-win situation. It was very hard work with Angel, very hard work with La Cámara, very hard work with the companies. We have the general director here of Navantia, Indra, that I can see, and it was really astonishing work. And after that, a couple of agreements have been signed. Macarena's here with a couple of universities, and I'm very proud to have helped in that way. And of course, the Animal Forum, that's why we're here today. We are also financial collaborators in the Animal Forum. We're always here to help in front of the stage, backstage, and whatever might be needed. And it is the 11th year. I'm very proud to have been part of 5 of them, and I'm very honored to have come after my predecessors' work after these 11 years. I truly thank the hard work of SRAP, of those who are here today, those who were here then, and I'm confident that the alliance between SRAP and Instituto Cervantes will continue during the coming years in these different 3 main areas and any other areas that may excite. And there, one last thing, and this is you, Ivan, Research Bites. As mentioned before, of course, there are members of SRAP in Melbourne. And as mentioned before, Instituto Cervantes has recently opened wonderful hub in Melbourne. We have premises there, a beautiful small building. It's only ours, which is, I'm very proud of that. But we have to not only promote the Spanish language, but promote Spanish culture in Spanish, and more specifically, promotion of science in Spanish, or promotion of Spanish researchers. And this is a wonderful example, also mentioned by Angel, which is research bites that are usually or may not be spoken or being talks about research, different areas in Spanish. Thank you so much. And lastly, this is part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as mentioned as well by Angel. The Malaspina Award, which is hosted by SRAP, of course, by the embassy, and by Navantia, and Instituto Cervantes helps in the promotion and is very honored. And by the way, we always work very hand in hand with those who were finally awarded the Malaspina Award, so you have a wonderful taste in selecting the awards. And without further ado, I would like to this is not un punto y final, this is a continuing story, the never-ending story. So even if I leave, there will be a wonderful director. He has already been nominated, and he will continue with the work that we have been done until now, and with the work that has been done with my previous, with the previous directors of Instituto Cervantes. We are an example to be followed, SRAP and Instituto Cervantes in Australia, with the general hub of the Instituto Cervantes worldwide. And they always mention that in the meeting, so I'm very proud of being part of it, and it's been an honor to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Coral. I also appreciate a lot of the work that we have been doing together. We will miss you. And thank you also for sponsoring again the research forum, not only that part, but also the photographer and so on. Anyway, well, once that formal part is completed, let's go to the topic. Let's go to start talking about IA. And for that, it is my privilege to invite to the stage to Professor Ian Opperman, who is going to be providing the keynote lecture about what is IA. So, please welcome. It is not working, just sign to us and we will change.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And let me also acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Right at this very moment, in fact, all of this week, the ISO IEC Standards Group Subcommittee number 42 have been working on promoting or developing international standards for artificial intelligence. They're looking at issues of data, of bias, of use cases, and AI management. And they're working at a very detailed level. They're looking at the engineering, the nuts and bolts, the really lowest levels of uses of AI and applications of AI and the elements of AI, but they're also looking at the governance of AI. And that's a really powerful step forward when we think about appropriate use of AI. The problem, of course, is that AI keeps changing. AI keeps surprising us. AI keeps entering areas that we have always felt were the domain of strictly and exclusively of people. AI increasingly is being able to mimic empathy, judgment, and creativity. And so when we think about the future of AI, it's very difficult to grapple. It's very difficult to think about what might come next. And so what I thought I would do today is have a little bit of fun, of course, because we're talking about AI. This is a research community. Look at the past, or look at the present from the perspective of the past. Then look at some of the elements of what the present looks like, and then think a little bit about what the future might look like. And then, of course, what I'm really going to try and do is talk to you about standards and about AI, but I'll see if I can weave it in there so you don't notice that I'm talking about standards, because my favorite thing in the world to do is to talk about standards. I am that guy at the party. Don't come near me. Let's get going. Now, this is a view of the early 21st century as seen from 1960. And the gentleman who was projecting the forward was a guy called James Berry. And back in 1960, he said, there will be a computer in every home. There will be labour-saving devices that make life at home much easier for everybody, specifically women working at home. And he presented this view of this ideal future scenario. There is no one in their right mind who would present an image like this of the future now. He's certainly correct about there being a computer in the home. He's certainly correct about a lot of labour-saving devices. But the understanding of what a computer in the home is completely wrong. No one has something that size in their house. It also embeds some really strong stereotypes about gender roles and about, in particular, the role of women in the household, which not even identified when projecting forward this image from now almost 70 years ago, 60-something years ago. So when we think about the future, we often think about the evolution of technology, but we don't think about how society reacts. We don't think about changing attitudes. And we don't identify these deeply held beliefs that we have, which we don't identify and we extrapolate into our future thinking about the use of technology. This particular gentleman went on to produce a whole lot of different perspectives of the world of the 21st century. If you go to the next slide, please. There's another one about autonomous vehicles or self-driving vehicles. And you can just imagine, we do have autonomous vehicles today. We have vehicles that are getting closer and closer to being fully autonomous. And the view seen from 1960 of those autonomous vehicles is not that far off in terms of the technology. We are still struggling today as societies to think about, is it appropriate to have self-driving vehicles? Who is responsible if there's an accident? Who's responsible? Is it the people in the car? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Is it the last people who made the software update or who did not do the software update. There are issues about responsibility that we've not been able to tackle or not been able to come to a conclusion on, even though the technology is available. And again, when we think about some of the assumptions that are built into an image from almost 70 years ago about what the present looks like, there's one really, really obvious thing, or a couple of really obvious things in here that really don't make sense in our world. Parents and children are sitting talking to each other. They're engaging with each other, as if that would happen. And of course, they're playing a board game. And if you have tried to get your family to play a board game in the last decade, you'll understand just what a challenge it really is. The point is, projections about technology may well be reasonable, but when we project into the future and think about what will be the impact of that technology in our society, it's very, very hard, first of all, to identify the assumptions that we have about how we interact as human beings, but it's really hard then to filter them out and to reimagine a world where those assumptions actually could be different. And the technology not only influences those assumptions, but also influences how we engage with each other. No one thought when we first started developing smartphones that we would have real concerns about children and young people disconnecting from the real world. No one thought when social media first arrived and it was a method for people to stay in touch with each other that we would have real concerns about cyberbullying, or that we would have real concerns about young boys and young girls comparing themselves to not just the prettiest boy or the prettiest girl in the classroom, but the prettiest boy or the prettiest girl anywhere in the world. We would not have thought that cyberbullying would have been such a serious issue when the first devices came out or the first social media came out. And when we think about the impact of AI, it's not the nuts and bolts about whether bit A and bit B make sense with each other. It's the broader considerations when we move from the project to doing things at scale and then ultimately doing things at societal level that we really struggle to understand the implications of, especially when it seems so innocent or so simple as a project. Next slide, please. By the way, this gentleman has produced a number of projections of the future, which includes us living under the sea, taking holidays on the moon, all of which should be achieved by now. Now, AI also has been surprising us quite a lot since generative AI came about. Of course, AI has been in existence since the 1950s, and it has constantly evolved. But everybody started to pay attention when generative AI came out in November 2022. I was at my family Christmas party and talking to my cousin's new boyfriend, and he said, "Hello, who are you?" I said, "My name's Ian. I'm the Chief Data Scientist for New South Wales Government," which I was at the time. His eyes glazed over. And then I said, "And I do AI." And the whole room stopped and started listening to what I was saying to my cousin's new boyfriend. And I thought for the first time, wow, my family is listening to me. This AI stuff must be important. And we got through 2 whole question and answer before the volume went back up and it went back to normal. But what's been surprising is what AI can do. You've probably all heard about the Turing test, which Alan Turing developed, which was very simple. If you're engaging with an algorithm just by a text interface, and you cannot tell that it's an algorithm, you guess that it's a human. If you can't tell, then the algorithm has passed the Turing test. And that's a very simple contextual environment. It's one-dimensional. There's no gestures, there's no body language, there's no back and forth. It's simply text-based interface. So it's really tightly constrained from a contextual perspective. And if you can't tell, then the algorithm has passed the Turing test. Now that stood the test of time for decades. Now, not only can people not tell that they're engaging with an algorithm, but way back in 2023, there were a series of trials done where human doctors and algorithms were answering people's medical questions. And the people interacting with the doctors or the algorithms consistently said the algorithm's responses are more complete, more accurate, and more empathetic. Now that's interesting because the 3 things that we have always said belong to us: empathy, creativity, and judgment. And this is a very low context environment. It's very, very low context. But the algorithm is able to mimic empathy in that low context environment. And a lot of research has been done to say, well, if we reintroduce video, if we reintroduce facial gestures, if we reintroduce a whole lot of other elements to it, can you still mimic empathy? And you may have seen some reports which have come out very, very recently about the number of children and young people who are actively building relationships with algorithms and who, in some cases, prefer to engage with the algorithm, to engage with the bot, rather than engage with their friends. And most recently, in fact, yesterday, I saw a report about the worldwide loneliness epidemic, where many, many people, children and young people in particular, are preferring to engage with algorithms because the algorithms don't judge, and they get enough empathetic feedback from these algorithms that they are preferring a relationship with an algorithm than they are with a human being. But when you think about good uses of this, all medical systems around the world are under pressure. There's a scarcity of resources, there's a scarcity of capability to deliver resources, deliver services, in particular in regional, remote and rural areas. So this sort of application could actually be quite beneficial if the right guardrails were put around it, if the right assurance of use was put around it. But unassured, uncontrolled, unconstrained, this can lead to some really unexpected challenges. Next slide, please. Now, this is the brain of a fruit fly, which I'm sure was exactly what you were expecting to see when you asked for a presentation. Fruit flies have been very good friends of medical research for a very, very long time. They have very short life cycles. They're very easy to breed, and if you want a particular strain, it's very easy to create that strain and reproduce and reproduce and reproduce given their short life cycle. But they die. And when they die, if you've got the next one ready, that's great. But if you don't, you potentially could lose your entire research strain because the fruit fly has died. So a team in October last year mapped the entire brain of a fruit fly. So 139,000 neurons, 50 million connections, they got everything. They got every part of that fruit fly brain. And they're now being able to do some really powerful research and looking at very hyper-focused, hyper-specialised, you would say hyper-personalised if it was a person, but hyper-focused on that fruit fly's response to light stimulus or audio stimulus or a range of other stimuli. And that's really, really powerful. If you could just tap these slides out and hit just one more, stop there, thank you. It means you can ask questions you've never been able to ask before. You can know things you've never been able to know before. And of course, once you map, the next thing to do is to model. We have models for neurons, we have models for connections between neurons. And once you model, the thing you do after that is to simulate. And so it's quite feasible to take a complete mapping of a fruit fly brain and model it and then simulate it and simulate the fruit fly's response to light or to audio. And also you could start to see really fine-grained detail of how that brain is working. You could see how memory is laid down. You could see how memory is recalled. You could see how that fruit fly responds to a variety of different stimulus, how this fruit fly responds to that fruit fly, for example. And you can simulate the entire thing. Now, interestingly, it's everything. It's everything. It's not missing a little bit of the fruit fly brain that makes it a fruit fly. It's everything. So conceptually, we also have the issue that the simulation might not know it's a simulation. And the simulation might have the digital equivalent of a level of consciousness in the same way that we would expect a fruit fly to respond to a variety of different stimuli or make decisions or take actions. And that's a really interesting question to think about when we've got everything. And it also raises some ethical considerations. There are considerations, of course, around research around animals, which are ethics-based, where we know how to frame them, but we know how to frame them for a living animal, but we don't quite know whether or not they even apply, or whether we should, or how to even think about them for a digital twin of an animal, or a digital twin of the nervous system of an animal, or in this case, the entire brain of a fruit fly. Next slide, please. Now, the good thing is we're not talking about human beings, except that we are. And again, in October last year, so a whole year ago, so this is almost ancient history in the world of AI, a whole year ago, Google mapped a piece of the human brain the size of half a grain of rice, tiny, tiny little bit of the brain, but with such detail and fidelity that they're able to do some similar sorts of things around asking really powerful questions around personalised medicine, or looking at things like dementia, amyloid plaque buildup, which until recently have been done at fairly broad level. And again, once you map, the next step is to model, and after that, simulate. And I haven't used the word AI in context of the fruit fly or the human brain, but if you've got a complex model, a really complex model, where you are simulating and providing stimulus data, that is what AI is. AI is a use case of data. And so once again, we can ask questions. I'm going to get you to tap out 3 times. You can ask questions you've never been able to ask before. You can know things you've never been able to know before. And you can get a really personalised understanding of how that brain responds to certain drugs, to certain treatments, to certain medicines. And you can get really personalised about treatment of a brain, because that's not any brain. That's John Smith's brain or Jane Smith's brain. And you could actually see not just how memories are laid down or brought back, you could actually see how John Smith feels about Jane Smith, or you could see if John Smith wants to be Jane Smith. And so we could inadvertently ask questions of these simulations of these algorithms, which we did not intend. We could know things accidentally that we did not intend to know. Next slide, please. I'm getting to the end of my slightly out there scenarios, but I wanted to raise 2 more. First is that there was a case, again last year, of a woman called Henrietta Lacks, who in the 1950s, a black American woman had a biopsy taken of a tumour. That biopsy was analysed, intended to treat her, but the company who did the biopsy took that biological material and then continued to breed successive generations of that material in order to produce treatments and drugs. And this was the US. In the US, they decided to litigate and say that the benefit of that belongs to the estate of Henrietta Lacks. And surely Henrietta Lacks should benefit from the ongoing research and the value created from that. And that's a reasonable argument. The court decided eventually that yes, the estate of Henrietta Lacks had a right to the benefit which came from her biological material. But imagine instead that the company takes the biopsy, does the job they're supposed to, then creates a digital twin of that biopsy, and then produces those treatments and protocols and drugs based on a high fidelity version of that biopsy, that digital twin. I'll get you to tap that out 3 more times, please. The question then, of course, is there a benefit that should go back to the estate of Henrietta Lacks? Who owns that digital twin? Who's got the right to control it? And again, could you inadvertently ask questions of that mapped, modelled, simulated digital twin of that biopsy, which would be inappropriate? Would you discover other things about Henrietta Lacks that you shouldn't know? And the issue here is that the ethical considerations we apply to non-AI systems start to really be challenged when you think about dealing with digital twins or dealing with AI-generated, simulated scenarios of biological systems at the level of detail where that really is Henrietta Lacks. It's not someone like Henrietta, but it's her. It's absolutely her. And we've all heard about in the entertainment sector where people, actors and artists are really concerned about their voices and images being recorded and avatars being created. And that's, of course, a concern about future earning potential, doing away with the need of the artist or minimising the need of the artist. But in this case, we're talking about a biological sample. Could you hit up 1 more time, please? And imagine, in this case, if instead of Henrietta Lacks, what we're doing is reanimating images and avatars and creations of famous people from history. Again, a case from last year, people using the image of Albert Einstein were sued, and it was declared that the estate of Albert Einstein owned the right to use his images when thought about from this virtual perspective. But imagine the estate of Napoleon Bonaparte or of Cleopatra or of Julius Caesar. There is no estate left, it's extinguished. There are no rights left for that person, they're extinguished. In New South Wales, you have a right to privacy up until and including 30 years after you've died. After that, different considerations fall into place, but privacy is extinguished after 30 years. And in copyright in the world, it's life of the artist plus, I think it's up to 85 years. But after that, most rights are extinguished. So being able to protect the memory, the traditions, the history, the reputation of someone who died a very long time ago suddenly becomes a difficult thing to do. Of course, there is a question of who cares, but the ability to take control of and reanimate someone who was very long dead is a definite possibility, either if you have images or ways of reproducing, or imagine you did have biological samples of someone and you could create complex digital twins of those. Let's keep going, please. So, tap that out a few times and we'll get to the next slide. So, that's all the fun stuff done. So that was the fun bit. Now we're starting to talk about more serious stuff. So the issue, of course, is that AI has been around for a very long time, and generative AI really surprised us to the point where everybody started talking about it. And since then, various different versions of that AI have come out, and we've seen this incredible acceleration, truly exponential acceleration of the capabilities of AI, driven by compute, memory, and access to vast quantities of data. And it's a very crude line. It's not exactly a line of best fit, but it's a kind of a line of best fudge. You can see that if this trend continues, it gets rapidly faster. And as human beings, we are very poor at understanding the implications of exponential response. Everyone who lived through COVID thought about the world and trying to respond to COVID, which was an exponential problem, in very linear terms. And here in New South Wales, we had the benefit of watching what was happening to the rest of the world as COVID approached Australia. But even with all of that foresight and knowledge and preparedness, human beings do not respond well to exponential challenges. We tend to respond in a linear fashion. And when we respond with our thinking in a linear fashion, it's very hard to stay ahead of where that curve is going. Next slide, please. And part of the issue, of course, is that every type of AI has been getting better and better and better. When I was a PhD student way back in the 90s, I would earn a little bit of extra money by reviewing papers about neural networks, and they were just not that impressive. It was interesting that they worked at all, but they just weren't that impressive. My friends were doing speech recognition and then speech synthesis, and it just wasn't that good. It was okay, but it wasn't that good. And various other forms of AI, image recognition and so on, were kind of okay, but they weren't that amazing. They all got better recently, and they all got better at the same time. So all the things that identify, understand, synthesize, replicate what we do as human beings all got better at the same time. Access to compute, access to memory, access to massive quantities of data. And then new algorithms were produced which combined convolutional neural networks, which combined handwriting recognition, image processing, speech recognition. They all got better at the same time and were repackaged into something that wouldn't just detect and synthesize, but could generate. Next slide, please. The World Economic Forum is a really great source of information about global trends. And this year, when they put out the World Economic Forum report, AI was the biggest issue that people were thinking about normally, or historically. It's been issues around climate change and issues around misinformation. AI was the top thing when it talked about, when they looked at, in particular, the future of jobs. And once upon a time, in fact, last year and the year before and the year before, when we talked about the impact of AI, because AI was a thing, there were always a series of jobs that said, these are safe. If you are dealing with a high touch, high contact, high empathy role, you're safe. Now they're saying, not so much, not so much. There is a whole lot of job types, whole lot of future career types, which they predict, or at least people they survey predict, will be dramatically impacted by AI. It will impact everything, every sector, every consumer, every industry, but in ways that people didn't believe possible until recently. And when we think about the future of work, we're not talking about just the impact next year. We need to think about 2030, which is a little bit further down the road, and then 2040, and 2050, and 2060, and 2070. We need to think about the generations to come, and that's really hard. I give you those first images of that person sitting on the floor in front of a big computer. It's really hard to understand the impact of that technology, especially when it's moving so quickly, and that exponential curve doesn't slow down, it gets faster and faster. So there are a couple of things that I really do recommend having a look at this year's World Economic Forum report, Future of Jobs. Have a look at it when it comes out in January next year, and look at what people around the world are saying about the impact it will have on future work. And the surprising part again is those areas that we really thought were exclusively the domain of us are starting to be impacted. Next slide, please. I need to hurry up a little. There's also the type of skills. What skills do you need? And of course, being able to use AI is becoming what people think they need to do. So I often say to people, don't be worried about AI taking your job. Be worried about the colleague sitting next to you taking your job if they're better at AI than you are. Just kidding, but do have a look at the person next to you, just in case. So skilling ourselves up is part of how we need to respond to this. We need to get better at understanding the art of the possible, as well as the limitations of current capability. We also need to be much, much more familiar, all of us need to be much more familiar with what AI can do and how to think about AI. Next slide, please. And now coming back to Australia, Europe, of course, has the EU AI Act, which is fantastic and does make specific reference to those standards which are being continued to work on, the ISO IEC 42000 series of standards. That's fantastic. And again, that's really talking about the equivalent of electrical safety. It's not the same thing with AI, but all homes in Europe, all homes in Australia have standards around the voltage, the frequency, how much current's allowed to flow. And the AI standards are doing something equivalent in terms of some of the basics of AI, but they don't address these bigger societal challenges. Australia has been talking about developing a national framework for AI assurance for some time, and we will see something, we expect to see something before the end of the year to come from the Commonwealth Government. But as yet, we still lack the sort of guidance that either originally was developed in the US, thrown away in January, but originally developed responsible AI guidance in the US, EU AI Act. China has quite strict mandates around uses of AI. We don't yet have that in Australia because we have protections through legislation around consumer protections, around privacy and so on. But again, when we think about replacing a human being protected from another human, but a human being protected in their rights being protected from an algorithm, those existing legislations start to become a little bit challenged. Next slide, please. In New South Wales, we had, just tap one more time. In New South Wales, we developed what's called the AI Assurance Framework. We developed a version way back in 2021, and then it was made mandatory to apply in government in March 2022. And when generative AI came out towards the end of 2022, we updated that to produce the newer version, which is something which is freely available. And it tries to, just tap the next slide, it tries to acknowledge that AI is coming at you from every direction. Once upon a time we built it, now you just upload it, or you do a software update and suddenly you've got AI. And we carried out a way of thinking about AI from these different perspectives, whether you buy it, build it, or it just comes built in, or even if you're using automated decision making. Next slide, please. And we borrowed some ideas around potentially elevated uses of AI, elevated risk uses of AI, which is similar to the thinking in the EU AI Act, and also similar to the AI management standard thinking. Next slide, please. And we tried to work out when you need to assure appropriate use of AI. Is it when you're experimenting? Is it when you pilot? Is there a relationship with the vendor who's supplying black box components or supplying whole components? Is it when you scale? And the answer, of course, is yes. It's at all these different phases in use of AI, if it matters. If, in particular, you've got an elevated risk use of AI, then it's absolutely essential at every stage to try, test and learn, and to put real effort into really learning from that phase of the activity. There's also, in particular in government, always a challenge when there's a vendor involved and the vendor supplies a black box or supplies a component, that the risks associated with the use of that component disappear into the system subsequently built. And we had that challenge in New South Wales where a biometric facial matching system was included in a solution or system that was being developed by government. Without scrutiny of that black box component, without assurance of that component, then the entire system potentially gets compromised because it's someone else's problem if the vendor is only looking after their part and the people building the solution are only looking after their part. Next slide, please. So I'm getting close to the end. So I wanted to, again, just to point out to you that there's some really good work being done in the world of standards, the ISO IEC world of standards. Not only with Subcommittee 42, which is focused on AI, but also Subcommittee 27, which is cybersecurity. You've probably all heard of ISO IEC 27001. There is great work being done in data sharing frameworks because ultimately AI is a use of data. And if you don't have the data right, it's really hard to imagine how you appropriately use the AI data products. There's great work being done in Subcommittee 32. Next slide, please. And I wanted to leave you with two things. The first is, we saw the fruit fly brain before. This is legislation. This is in fact red meat export legislation, which has been mapped into a digital environment, analysed by AI, looking for compliance, and then of course you can look at that same, your own policies and whether or not you're complying. It's a really interesting use case of complex systems where you map, model, simulate, and then apply. Nowhere near as complex as a fruit fly brain, but legislation does get complex pretty quickly. And this is simple export of one type of product. And the last thing I wanted to leave you with was, ooh, you just back up? Well, there you go. Imagine there's a picture there. It's unlikely, some of you, it's unlikely you might ever sit down and actually read an international standard, which would be a real shame in my humble opinion. But if you don't ever want to read the standard, there is a really important primer standard called ISO IEC 42001, which is AI management systems. But the image which is missing, but the link which is available there, Standards Australia produced an 8-page, very easy to read document which describes the way to think your way into that standard, so you have a much, much easier way to access it. So today's Friday. If there's nothing good on TV tonight, download the standard or download that little 8-page one. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Ian. Before moving to the next presentation, do we have questions for Ian? Do you want to ask a question? We have one there, so you can get a microphone to him, and please, Ian, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. Very informative talk. I was just wondering, we in Australia are in this kind of group of countries which are highly developed, but I guess 2/3 of the world still don't have access to internet, the access to AI, the kinds of membership and all on. So how the discussion you're having in this talk will affect the global south, the developing countries? Any thoughts on that?
It's a very good question. So I'm actually the Vice President of the International Electrotechnical Commission, so the IEC, part of ISO IEC. We've asked that question about access to energy, and we've asked that question about access to connectivity. We haven't asked the question about access to AI. If you don't have connectivity, if you don't have energy, you don't get AI. So there's a lot of thought going into how developing economies can leapfrog based on appropriate technologies. And we've been trying to envisage what the future looks like and who will get access, what percentage of the world's population will increasingly get access to energy and connectivity over time. And we're reasonably optimistic that by 2040, 2050, most of the world will have energy by design, and most of the world will have access to connectivity. But there's still 800 million people who don't have access to affordable energy. So we haven't asked the question about AI, and I think it's a really important question to ask. If you look at access to energy and net wealth of the country, there are no poor, energy-rich countries. There are countries which are energy-rich do very well economically. There's a very strong correlation. Similarly with connectivity, and I presume it will be similar with regard to access to AI. But the honest answer is, haven't thought a lot about it.
There is a question online. Thank you. So Alex Engruta says, great talk. Do you think the scaling of AI capability will continue? Which of these factors do you think is most likely to limit its growth?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that confluence of different technologies coming together, that happened quite recently, and they are all moving together, and suddenly there's this massive acceleration because they all happened at the same time, and then wrap around that with generative AI. The question is, can that happen again? And I was reasonably certain it wouldn't happen again. And then the next generation of generative AI came out, and then the next generation. So I think it's not a Moore's law analogy. I don't think it's appropriate because there are multiple factors feeding into that acceleration. If it's just the number of chips you can put on a piece of silicon, that would be a limiting factor. And that's petering out slowly. But the accuracy and the fidelity and the ability to exceed human expectations or human capabilities in reading, writing, comprehension means that we are in a different area. So my simple prediction is, if we had this meeting again next year, we will be surprised by how much further AI has gone. Will it hold that exponential curve? I don't know, but I think we'll be really surprised. And then if we came back 5 years from now, we would look back on this and say, those were the good old days. That's when everything made sense and things were moving slowly.
I have a follow-up question for that. In the infrastructure aspects, what do you think will be the limitations? Because I think for all the cooling and storage.
Yeah. So I mentioned, I didn't tell you earlier, but I'm the Vice President of the International Electrotechnical Commission, and we have agreed that we will look at standards for data centers with a real priority. And we'll work with ISO and work with the ITU, International Standards Organization, and the International Telecommunications Union to try and come up with a blueprint for future data centers with AI and also consideration of the carbon impact. So this is our three-dimensioned approach, or three-legged approach to what we're looking at. And the IEC looks at energy generation, transmission, consumption, architectures inside data centers. ISO, IEC together look at AI and power consumption associated with AI, and working also with our colleagues in ISO and ITU will look at the carbon impact. So we will release a blueprint, a roadmap soon, and then hopefully, roughly speaking, this time next year, a blueprint. The challenge, of course, is if you make more roads, if you make the roads better, you have more cars. And if we make data centers more effective and more efficient, people will use them more. So there is a real conundrum around not just trying to improve the current situation, but also trying to anticipate that extra capacity, extra resources will undoubtedly be consumed by extra demand. So it's a serious issue, and it's something we really need to consider. Thank you.
Hello. Great talk. I'm very, worried about the empathy part. A doctor has a lot of patients and not so much patience.
Sure.
Right? AI can have all the patients, it's always like the first patients, right? Now with young children, on the one hand, we are moving into a world that is really, really fast, so becoming impatient, but at the same time, we want to listen what we want to listen, right? It's programmed for you to hear what you want to be doing great, keep on, so how to solve this problem? Because we're still humans, we need to interact with each other, like it or not, and if we always keep listening to what we expect to hear, then it's hard to face reality. And the reality is that you need to learn how to deal with other people, that not everyone has a lot of patience.
Yep. So I think it's a real issue. I mentioned the very recent report about the loneliness epidemic, loneliness crisis, which is being identified around the world. I think that, and during this week, I've spent several sessions talking to healthcare professionals about their use of AI so that they can be more efficient, effective in the healthcare system. And there are many, many good uses of AI that I think would be very, very beneficial in terms of helping. But when it comes to patient interaction, I think we have a real challenge there. So I'm advising a company at the moment which is using AI to help people stay in clinical trials so they don't drop out. The same application is to try and prevent hospital readmissions. These are real issues which clog up the healthcare system or reduce access to clinical data. That's right at the edge of what I think is appropriate, because the moment you start having an empathetic relationship with AI, you've got a real problem. And in Australia, of course, we've just trying to enact the technology to ban children under 16 from using social media, which I think is an excellent idea, but fraught with technological problems, to try and limit people's access, young people's access to social media. So I think part of our thinking needs to be to really reinsert the human back into the loop. And it's not just the end user human, but all the humans in all the loops associated with AI. I think we need to think much more carefully about it. I think we need to slow down in some areas and appropriately think about use of AI in other areas. For process automation and various other areas, there are real opportunities to improve things. But if we keep accelerating and keep stimulating and keep comparing and keep giving access, in particular to young children and young people, I think we will accelerate an already serious problem. So partly I think it's slowing down, and partly it's the human in the loop has to be the empathetic human in the loop who's qualified, capable, and confident enough to say, actually, no, I don't want the AI, or in fact, I don't believe what the AI is telling me. I will judge differently. So I think it's a really important conversation to have. Not a simple answer, though.
Thank you for your insights. I was curious to know what your thoughts on how AI will impact students and young people in the workforce, particularly in terms of skills atrophy.
Yeah, so it's a really important question. And I think, people have talked about the pyramid structure in organisations going to the diamond structure where you start to hollow out a lot of those intern level skills. I think that's a real problem. And I don't think we worked out how to do it. I met the son of a friend who came out to visit from Finland, and he was been graduated for 3 years, was writing software. And I said, he talked about how he's using AI to do the first draft of all software that he writes now. And I said, well, what do recent graduates do? And he said, I don't know. So I think we need to think carefully about how we preserve the skills, in particular those entry-level skills, which are not deliberately tedious, but it historically has been how we learned. And I think we need to think differently, because people will use AI. There's no way that you can force someone to do things the old way now. I think thinking differently about how we do those base level skills is going to be really quite important. I'm afraid I'm going to have to run away, but thank you very much. Thank you for your very kind thinking.
Thank you very much, Ian. It has been fantastic. We are a little behind schedule, but I think it has been a fantastic conversation and question that we have already discussed. I would like to invite Jose Miguel Bello Villaniro, who is actually the co-chair of this research forum, and I will give everything to you because you're going to be talking next about what you're doing.
Yes. More than the co-chair, I'm the sub-chair, as I have made the joke, because Angel is doing everything and I'm just getting some credit. So, what is the contrary of a trifecta? When now I'm the last person talking before lunch, I'm the person who has to keep up with 20 minutes behind schedule, and I'm talking after Ian. So it's always terrible to be. So trivorsa, I would suppose. Ian, I was hoping to have the opportunity to credit him. He was the person who actually created personally the first binding rules for AI. Because as a chief data person for the New South Wales government, it was the first time in the world that I know of, and I think I know quite well, that they introduced rules for AI in the use in the public sector that were binding, that you actually have to follow them. They were kind of policy advice before, and with the exception of Canada, which has some ADM rules to make decision making that way. 3 years ago, I was in the forum. I presented on AI, on governance of AI, and I suppose this is a bit dated now, but I think that those of you who heard me back then and saying like the need of rules and all of that, I suppose what you heard today sounds kind of familiar. I have that slide there. It's an introduction about me. As some of you know, I'm a Spanish diplomat, but I'm currently working at the University of Sydney. I'm on leave. What I'm saying here today is on a personal capacity. I'm not representing anyone, and you'll see why, because the first exercise that I had was to entertain you a bit with this. Okay, I'm going to show a few things. Let's see, I'm going to ask you questions about it. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'll leave it there. So this was meant to be a much more interactive game, but obviously time does not allow for it. But who recognizes some of those comic strips, like in the, okay. Who recognizes most of them? Kind of. Okay, yeah, on the territory. Well, the purpose of that game was to show you that actually corruption is all over the world. It's not something that happens in developed countries or developing countries or these countries. Yes, some countries rank better and they are cleaner, for example, Singapore, and then it becomes the money laundering place of the world. Just note that I am speaking on my own behalf. I'm not representing anyone here. So if I tell that Singapore is the best money laundering place in the world, just take it like that. But I'll stop there with Bob Menendez just for a minute. Bob Menendez was a senator of the US, and he actually was charged with corruption with accepting bribes a while ago. So if this works, let's see. Yeah, just press it. Well, so this is what they found. They found actually gold bars at his place when the FBI were broken. And they said, well, this is not bribery. It is not bribery because actually there was not quid pro quo. People gave him gold bars, but that was just like the way things go. So it's not, you cannot see the relationship between the bribe, the gold bar, and him still doing favors to other people. It needs to be strict. So when I started working, when I took academic leave from the diplomatic service, and I started working, I work on corruption on a data approach to corruption. Like, can we do things? Can we measure corruption? Can we do things with corruption in a way? Because I had seen it all over the world. I would make a few jokes here if we were in a different and we were not recorded, but I would just leave it there. But pretty much, Transparency International offers this data, and I have been very critical about the data of Transparency International, but normally they grade countries and they show the slides. And I wanted to show that everything is red. I don't like this green or yellow stuff. All the countries around the world are red. Yes, some areas of the world, you perceive corruption because there is less petty corruption. Some areas are better. But if you go to the next slide, so if you see in the previous one, 1 minute, just in the previous one, that pretty much all over time, corruption has not improved. There are increases and decreases in countries, but pretty much data shows that there is no improvement. So, what can we do? And I put a proposal. I have been working on governance of AI and automated decision making for a while. I had a PhD on corruption, so I know a bit about that. And I said, can I merge both things that I know about and try to do something practical? So I knew the literature quite well, and there was quite evidence that corruption looks different in different places, that there are some times where you call corruption in one place, in other places you call it jobs for the mates, and it's not technically corruption, but that all of this is undermining the legitimacy of our systems, how our systems operate, how we trust the government. And after all, I'm a civil servant. What I care about is the government doing good things for the people and for societies. So I said, well, actually you can do a lot, because there is, that's okay, don't worry about it. There is a lot, if you can just go back for a second, back from, yeah, okay, yeah, go to the next one, sorry. You can actually use AI, and not AI as necessarily as generative AI, but automating decisions, looking for patterns, these kind of things that are much more sophisticated. Before we could not monitor, we could not keep track of the things. Now with the computing power and the data on steroids, that's pretty much how we define AI. It's all you can do all these things that the patterns of systemic corruption are hard to detect, hard to prove by humans. But machines can do much better job. They might not tell you if it's corruption or not, but they can identify those patterns. So it was this guy, the first of is Mihaly Fazekas. He's from Hungary, so they also know a thing or two about corruption, and he's probably the leading author on this field. And he has been publishing all this work with procurement data for many, many years and looking into the data and saying, well, you can detect corruptions. I love it, his best article, and this is Science Applied, his best article was, what happens in local government in Hungary when you change local government, when a different party is voted in. And all of a sudden, they discovered that, very funnily, the procurement changes, and the companies that procure with the local government change. Well, procurement is meant to be value for money. You procure things, you ask as the government, I want to buy something for you, I want to buy it at the best price for the best value. So changing whoever it is in the politics of a local government should not change who do you buy from. Surprise, surprise, it does. And he proved it. He used machine learning to go through all the data of the procurement of the local government in Hungary and shows that when parties change, the people that they buy from changes. So I thought I put a proposal and for the Australian Research Council with a partner, which was ICAC, so the oldest anti-corruption agency in Australia. And I asked them, could we look for ways of using AI for the government to protect itself? Not for the government to chase people, not the robot style, not for the government to do other things, but for the government to control the action of the government so we can identify it. And there was some evidence. The one that I have here is actually from Spain, the Court of Auditors of Spain, the Tribunal de Cuentas, tried to do a similar, simple version of that back in 2021 with the OECD. It didn't go that well, let's put it that way, but we learned a lot from the experiment. And in New South Wales, they tried to do it with police officers. When they change units, do they behave better? Do they behave worse? Like that kind of thing. Well, this is the project, which is, again, with ICAC. And this is the first time I talked about it in public. We are doing a lot of internal stuff, and we are going to start, we're going to the OECD in Paris in March, and we are going to be talking about what we are doing, but pretty much it's quite simple. It's how much data can you collect? And in the case of ICAC, it's a lot. They can pretty much know everything about any kind of civil servant. What can you do with that data? And what is fair to do with that data? What data is fair to collect, and what can you do fairly with that data? Then, if the system says, ooh, look at this pattern, look at what is going on here over time, how is the human meant to interpret that? If you are the civil servant that gets a flag, like a red alert, and saying, look at this procurement, can you ignore it? Do you have to pay attention to it? Can you decide these things? So it's the human-machine interaction that we all talk about when we are talking about AI, but in terms of a cognitive approach to that. And then, honestly, what we are trying to do is to try to disseminate the findings so other agencies are able to use it. Because it's not about ICAC using it and chasing people, it's about, again, the government controlling itself. So it's about offering the knowledge so an agency, any kind of agency, in this case, I'm working with the University of Sydney, so they can implement those controls internally, so it never gets to be that ICAC has to come to them and say, show me the money and show me where it goes. That it is for themselves to do it. And as you can imagine, as a Spanish national and as a civil servant, I care a lot about these things. But asteroids can be very, very bad. And I got this photo from, just trying to discourage athletes in the US to use asteroids, of all the things that can go wrong about it. Well, yes, they can be very, very, very bad, especially if you don't control it. So, a big chunk of my work, it's about, we know we can do that. Should we do it? How will we control it? What kind of controls we have to put? And first of thing is assessments. So I'm just going to give you 3 examples before I send you for lunch, but I'll try to go quite fast. First of all, ICAC receives a lot of complaints, like a lot of people saying this could be corrupt behavior. How do you distinguish between them? And how do you engage with them? And most of these people want to be anonymous. They want to be whistleblowers, but they are awfully scared about the repercussions. A few years ago, Transparency International gave its prize for the best whistleblower in the world to a Spanish national. Did you hear about them? No. They had a horrible, horrible life. It was part of the Gürtel plot in Madrid, and they were the person who suffered most. Because a whistleblower normally knows a lot about corruption, because they are connected to them. So if you can get an AI interaction tool in an assessment way to interact with the people that have the information in an anonymous way, you can get very, very far in this. People are scared of talking about people. People are scared about being recognized. Well, this is risky as well. So the next one, that's our investigations. Well, normally what we do when we are trying to look for conflict of interest, so someone has some member of a family that is in a company and then they are related to each other. Well, normally this is done through an investigation, but you can do it in a much more sophisticated way. You can look automatically and keep monitoring the people's LinkedIn's, the people's social media, the public parts, what they have declared internally, but also the metadata of their communications, like who they contacted when. And you can do that in real time. Should we do it? Should we get into people's LinkedIn's and check, or who they were a partner of, like look at the, I don't know, the birth, deaths, the registry, it's called in New South Wales, births, deaths, and marriages, I think it's called. But pretty much our registro civil. Should we be tracking everything of the registro civil, of every civil servant, of every partner of the government, all the time? Well, it's possible, doesn't mean that you have to do it. But obviously you will be able to mitigate corruption a lot if you do it. So that's where we have to find rules. And the third one is the big data analysis that we do. So, I mixed them. Like the other one, it was when we are investigating someone concretely, honestly, what you can do without a judicial mandate, without going to the judge, just put this in the public record, what Google knows about you and you can buy from Google, it's on the verge of scary. So if a public sector agency wants to engage with them, they can know a lot about what you have done. And they can detect, well, Jose Miguel was posted in Nicaragua when the Nicaraguan government did this and that, and he had a meeting before, because it's on his Outlook that he had a meeting and all of that, so probably he could be suspicious of starting a revolution in Nicaragua. Well, you can do that. Probably I cannot get credit for that, but that's the reality of it. I mean, it's a joke, just to be clear. Anyway, and there is the future work that we're trying to do, which is the chat for whistleblowers, so people get also warned about the risk of being a whistleblower, so people don't go candidly into it. The continuous conflict of interest, so for example, with universities, we're trying to be sure that all the data that we feel about a declaration of external interest, that is monitored actively with other data sets. So, and not to chase people and to get people and to say, hey, you didn't declare this. But to say, well, this thing here, would you like to update your declaration, or do you like to clarify, or you like to explain how it is? Well, that's the kind of the evolution part, just shifting it back to the agency and to the people. And then studying the human responses to AI outputs. And I always make the same joke. It's like the first time that you get an AI output, you are skeptical and you say, I don't believe it. Let me check it. Let me double check it. And it's right. The second time is right. The third time is right. By the fifth time, you stop checking. And the moment we stop checking is the downhill for the big mistakes. So that kind of the human part of the relation with the machine is something that matters a lot, especially for corruption investigations. And, yep, it hit it. Yep, no, we got stuck. That's good. So, just as I'm telling you, the whole point of this is we are going to develop some principles about how to use AI in anti-corruption, and we are going to go to the OECD and try to convince the club of mainly developed countries that is a good way of doing it. If we achieve it, or if we achieve just 1/10 of it, I will be probably the happiest person in the world. I'm very happy already, so that's the thing. But in any case, for me, it's the nice thing about academia. You can try, you can investigate, you can do the research. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, you learn something in the process, which is what I think SRAP is about. And I'll leave it there. I will not ask for questions now, but probably with a drink and some food is the right time. Thank you.
Unless you have a very short one. Oh, ever. We can keep it for the discussion later, okay? For the panel discussion, I think, because we are a little bit behind the schedule and I need to fix the issue with the remote control. So let's go for lunch. Thank you very much, everyone, for the first session. Have been fantastic.
Angela, what time do you come back?